Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an KEXP Reviews, where today we got ourselves a track from an act named Angine de Poitrine, told Sarniezz, and if we switch over to here, hopefully not butchering that pronunciation too much. This is of a live performance of a band, which is of particular interest to me because they use microtonal guitars and fret placements and stuff like that. Apparently they're also extremely good musicians. We're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it, let's go, what have we got? My French is just too rusty, but hopefully... Oh. Really raw tone to the bass that way. Are they looping it, are they, in the bottom? I mean, it's a pretty stunning fusion guitar bass they've got going on there. Yeah, look at that pedal board, right? Weird kind of dusty, playful feel to it, doesn't it? Kind of surreal, but nonetheless quite fun. Crescendoing with the hi-hats. It's incredibly tight with the rhythm, but also the performance itself. Yeah, okay, cool. There's some breakbeatish kind of stuff in there as well, nice. Kind of like they're feeding into those dominant 7th level quarter tones. Very surreal sample there. It's very organic with the tempo. tremendous. Yeah, that was a really good first impression to their work. I haven't really listened to a track of theirs.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.
Nice. There you go. École supérieure des métiers artistiques. Okay, the better school of artistic meteors. I'm not sure what that is, artistic standards. I'm not sure. Okay, we're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Angine de Poitrine, titled Sarniezz, a two-piece from, I presume, France, safely. We're going to, potentially anyways, we're going to be providing an overall song analysis of everything through to what I think this track is about, as well as any, the studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? Well, I tried to find a translation and I couldn't. So I'm not sure what Sarniezz means, but it's a name and they've chosen it, and that's totally fine. It's because there are no lyrics, and even if they were in French. I'm not necessarily sure it's about, maybe there's like a lore to it. I don't mean to sound sort of combative or anything. That's not it entirely. It's just interesting. I kind of dig when people just kind of have these names for things. I'm sure it's something that's relevant to both of them. There were no vocals, so there's not really anything to sort of discuss there. There were these kind of flangy samples that kind of maybe are the closest thing we have to a vocal line there. That came in occasionally as a talking point, but I'm not entirely sure what that's about. We could be sort of playfully kind of going over something that occurred with them, a person that maybe sounded like that or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but regardless, it's still, yeah, no, it's totally fun. I don't think this is a track that necessarily needed any vocals at all. It is made up of bass and guitar and drum parts, and it has this kind of half-time-ish kind of feel to the first part of it, and then it really picks up at the end when we sort of switch to normal time, and we kind of are rolling at about 175, 87, 175, depending on how you go. I'd say it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 175 for sure. I think for a through composed piece, there's enough going on with the various layers with the bass and guitar parts, as well as taking things away so it's not an entire staircase for the whole, whole 5 minutes of it. There's no filler within this piece. I feel like we kind of find the sweet spot of how much we've had something can we take to when we realize we need to switch things up. It's a band where simply you have a really proficient drummer who's very capable across the entire kit, very comfortable with doing less and very comfortable with doing more. Very tight in terms of the way we sort of phrase our different 8th, quarter, 16th, and triplet patterns there, as well as some 30 seconds, especially in the faster breakbeatish stuff near the end of the piece. We have an interesting tone to the snare drums. I noticed that they had cloths over some of the drum parts, like here. I don't know if you can see behind me if I remove myself for a second. Usually when you put cloths over drums like that, it gives them a very sort of sharp tone, which kind of sort of dampens them a little bit. Simultaneous, which might seem counterintuitive, but what I mean is that it's basically it tightens the tone of them and helps them to be a bit more sort of punchy in the mix, which I think is a nice contrast for how some of those notes carry over from those bass and guitar parts. To be clear, it's still a very tight tone on the guitar as well for the most part. Don't use a whole lot of distortion. A lot of it's drive, regardless of what we're doing, to not make it too aggressive, I suppose, especially in the more harmonically and layer complicated bits, but nonetheless enthralling. I think that we knew when to sort of play rhythmically in time with the guitar player. I think the drummer knew to sort of keep things relatively low key, especially in that first part there, just to sort of play in a way that doesn't overwhelm the listener immediately, especially if people are less sort of familiar with some of the microtonal sort of like quarter fret, half fret stuff that's going on with the guitars in most of the sections. But it's also being able to illustrate a sense of pace with things outside of the cymbals, which is really neat. And I also, it's just a really tight performance in terms of the actual keeping the tempo as well, regardless of the flow we're doing, whether it was half time or normal time, whatever. The fill transfers were clean. We had a variety of different sort of like tom patterns, and we were very comfortable doing a crescendos, and dynamic control was good from a cymbal as well as a snare perspective as well. But the guitar that we had in this piece was fascinating. I do really like the way that we layered our different bass parts and explored the fretboard a little bit. And we're very comfortable in the early stages simply having a slightly distorted root note put forward there. And if you thought that was going to be the rest of the track, you'd be either incredibly stoked or incredibly disappointed with what happens next. It's just at the start, we really do set expectations with the kind of how in your face it is with the bass tone. But the bass moves around a lot. We work in a way that's quite sort of close to what the guitar is doing. And I'm wondering, do we have half frets on the bass as well? We do have some half fret stuff going on with the big bass guitar as well. You can see there in that part, the frets are split in half there, whereas they're more sort of typical, if I'm not mistaken, down in that part there. I mean, that's a custom guitar there. You look at it and you can kind of see that you've got these custom sort of like dice knobs and everything like that. I'm not sure what kind of guitar it was initially, whether it was an existing guitar that they've gone and done different stuff with, or whether it was a custom job, but regardless, it's very, very cool. It's a very clever device, and I think to be able to do what they want to do, again, with this sort of, where they're not just playing semitones or whole tones, like an F and an F sharp. A microtone is the note in between an F and an F sharp, for example, which is kind of mind-blowing, but it adds a relative interesting quirky smoothness, because you're not just abruptly going, you know, like on a piano, for example, black-white key. It's smoother because you're hitting the in-between ones, and it also rhythmically makes transitions a bit slower, that it kind of add a rolling kind of lull to it. What's really amazing, regardless of whether we're going more slowly or more quickly on the bass guitar, is the fact that we never lost our sense of pace and pep to it. Even when we sort of step down and things are a bit more sort of like steady again, or when we were playing syncopated offbeats there, or when we were doing different time signatures, because I think we had some polymetric and polymeter stuff going on at one point. It was either 3 bars of 4/4 per time or 4 bars of 3/4 per time. I'm not sure. Maybe different instruments doing different things. The fact that you had some sort of like cascading, alternating kind of sequences from the guitar player as well. I mean, like the guitar, I know the bass and guitar player were the same person, but just knowing how not only to be that sort of technically proficient on the bass, but then to also be able to structure the lead guitar with those 2 or 3 octaves on top there, steadily exploring and adding different elements to the loop, is really impressive. There's like this kind of dun 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 dun, the triplet flow to that first part of the track there, which again, if you go further back, oh no, to be fair, there's a triplet flow for a lot of what's going on with the hi-hats and that earlier. It's like kind of like a shuffle that they've got there, which when you consider that we're going into sort of straight 4/4 at the last part, like, that's kind of amazing that we were able to sort of go from there to that. They're like 2 completely different songs, even though they're sharing a similar key signature despite the microtones. We even have these little kind of guitar melodies, little solo parts there that are almost like voices without needing to sort of commit too much to a specific lead line. We have these sort of sub leads that are interesting enough on their own to be leads, but we just know the right places to put extra notes and how to sort of get them to behave well harmonically, even when things would technically clash from flat seconds alone. It's almost like because they're quarter seconds or something like that, it's weirdly more acceptable because the weirdness is instantiated from the start. These kind of stops that you have occasionally are so tight as well. You can tell they're very sort of used to playing with one another in this kind of live perspective, and it's very difficult to get people to play this tightly in a studio, let alone a live environment nowadays, especially with the temptation of all the things you can do in post to fix things. So when you hear people playing these instruments together, it's just really fantastic to hear they can actually pull it off in that situation. There are these interesting sort of like chromaticisms outside of the microtonal stuff there, where there are some bluesy phrasings, and I know I'm going to talk about the theme in a moment there. Just knowing to kind of have this kind of bluesy pattern with some of the power chords, whilst also exploring the diatonics there, whilst also, if you had those microtones, just having them kind of be naked enough to and brazen enough to almost make their own importance for them. I think the smoothness of the triplets allows for more acceptability of what's going on with those quarter fret patterns. Around the 2-minute 15 mark, where they really are feeding off each other, when you get rid of that shuffle before things pick up like speed quite a lot, you have these pauses where it's almost like they're having a conversation with each other. I just think it's fantastic chemistry from an actual instrumental perspective as well. It's almost like you needed that pause for them to sort of discuss things with each other in order to be able to transition to the kind of drum bass kind of part near the end. It's almost like we've had a change of perspective and wanted to do something new. And like whatever the drummer is doing, because of the technicality of what the guitarist is doing and vice versa, I suppose, it just becomes kind of academic in its response and its sort of palatability within the piece. So therefore, you even like in that part with the wow around the 350 mark with that weird kind of flange sample on the sides of the stereo field, it's just a great palette cleanser for a lot of what we had beforehand, being relatively guitar and sort of drum oriented, but the drums to still be rhythmically in line with that sample just goes to, again, it's just that preparation there. It gives more. If they just had that kind of weird sample by itself, it would have just been a bit like kind of disconcerting, I think. They could have gotten away with it, but it lets you know that's still part of the performance. And there is just thematically, harmonically there, I don't feel like I've done enough to really discuss the guitar performance despite having prowled on about it for a bit now. But you've got this kind of slides and hammer-ons and pull-offs and little bends and all sorts of fun stuff, palm muted bits there. Lots of interesting guitar techniques, as well as flams and ghost notes on the drums and lots of like occasional rolls and everything like that. The dynamic range on all instruments is great. But you've just got a variety of different major and minor and sort of country scale-ish and kind of blues scale-ish kind of stuff going on there, outside of anything in between the semitones. It's just, again, you have moments of smoothness and you have moments of more sort of abrupt accenting and kind of suspense and drama, but it's never too overwhelming or kind of dreary there. They're still trying to have fun with music and keep that sense of pace and groove about it, despite how pleasantly chaotic a lot of it is. It's very rare that you get stuff that's major leaning where it's also chaotic where it sounds good. And I think it's also just testament to their ability to use their looping equipment, that they're able to sort of handle all these different layers without it becoming overwhelming or overcomplicated there. It's just proficiency, really. You can tell they'd be just as good live in the studio, but just, yeah, the dominant 7, some of the extensions there. But beyond that, I don't actually think we try to make the harmony more complicated than that. I think it's individual ideas on different things that are still quite technically kind of like advanced to play. Like, it's not an easy song to play by any means, let alone to loop. You know, it takes a lot of experience to be able to handle a few layers in a looping station, let alone a half dozen or what they've got going on at any one time. Just really impressed by it. Really impressed by it. I just feel like there was enough going on throughout the entire piece itself to not need more. We had varying sort of intensities in terms of the overall performance, like the speed, the kind of the accents and the impacts of certain parts. We went on a big old adventure without any filler, without a note out of place. Just great to see two really talented individuals who have written a really interesting piece of music, have done something different with the sound of instruments from an instrumental perspective, and have managed to gather an audience, which is also really cool. I understand it's just so different to a lot of people that, especially with the outfits. You know, the outfits is just a no-brainer. Having a different kind of outfit always catches attention, but I think it's more than that. I think you could have done a lot of things with an outfit like that and still gathered attention or garnered attention. It's just more that you were able to back up that kind of eccentricity with the music as well, with the expertise on display. Studio recording, mixing, mastering, just really well captured across the different samples, guitar, bass, and drums. It's great volume control for the looping parts. The drums in general I feel were quite well recorded. There was no issues with the EQing, the panning of them in the frequency spectrum, stereo field should I say, no weird resonances in the frequency spectrum. Things are quite well glued and compressed there. It was a live performance, so you're going to get a bit of that extra control there, but it wasn't choked. Nice and loud bit of pump in there. No real complaints from me. I just think it's a very different music to a lot of people have heard, especially more recently. I think that there are probably a lot of really talented, incredible musicians who are yet to come across from a general listener's perspective. And I think that branding is part of what's going to help people to recognize them, simply because I think if you're like, hey, this is music you've never heard before to someone, it maybe doesn't sell it as well as the kind of the presence of like looking at the audiovisual experience. That's why live performances are so important. You've actually got to see people playing their instruments and sort of understand they can really do it. That it's not, it's something that's actually happened that you can appreciate and that is also replicable. I enjoyed my time with it. It doesn't necessarily make me, it actually, to be fair, it does kind of make me want to get a microtonal guitar, but I mean, like, again, having those split frets in it, but I also know that that's another learning curve that I'll probably need a fair bit of time with. And I think it's also kind of niche with the application of it to a certain extent, but nonetheless incredibly interesting. Thank you very much for watching my review though of this track from Angine de Poitrine titled Sarniezz, live on KEXP, live performance. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias, and I'm sure there's people on no digital stream platforms. So stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SB reviews. Spiderhands out.